with Susan Michel. You are live on YouTube. This mic is all yours.
Hi, this is Susan Michel. I am here in Western Massachusetts. It is great to be here as always. What's especially great about my time here in Gather for A Course in Miracles is I always listen to Course in Miracles on Audible, for an hour or so prior to my talk. And it's so interesting because I've listened to the same words over and over and over. But when you can really digest the words of A Course in Miracles, it brings such utter peace to your mind. Yeah, I can just feel that peace, love, joy, and happiness that I'm always attempting to connect to. So it's just so wonderful, such a wonderful, wonderful thought system. I am the author of Surrender to Joy, From Suicide to Serenity. In that book, I teach the transformational truth of A Course in Miracles, which we are all here to study, to learn, to embody the knowledge of. Myrna is not going to be here today, so I send her lots of love. She's probably with her family. Glorian is here today. Yay, I'm so excited. Glorian from Little Neck, Long Island, right, Glorian? How are you?
Well, thank you. I'm doing well. We're having a great Friday. First, we started out with me, Kaylee and Karen, and then we had Kerry. Then we have Lynn and I have our meeting, and now we're here with you. So it's a joyous day.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. You're really getting your Course in Miracles fix in. That's just so beautiful. I love it.
All day, every
Uh,
day.
Perfect. So, and anyone else that would like to share, please raise your hand. Let us know that you have something to say. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on Course in Miracles subject matter because I always learn so much from the other Course in Miracles students and teachers. Course in Miracles clearly states that when more than one mind is joined, our power just uh, exemplifies itself, exacerbates itself, grows so much stronger. We need each other to make it home to heaven. So I will start. I have two paragraphs actually that I think I want to start with. I can't make up my mind. I'm thinking, should I start with this one paragraph that was originally suggested by Dove, or should I start with the introduction of my book? I think I'm going to start with both of them. The introduction of my book states, "My passion is God. God is love and joy and beauty. He is all that is good in the world. Everything else is our own miscreation. When we are filled with joy, we are connected to God. When we are not joyful, we have lost our connection to all that is real. This is my message. It can be clarified with three simple words: surrender to joy. There is nothing to find. All we need to do is surrender." So, God's will for me is perfect happiness. And when I can just surrender to his strength, his wisdom, his love, his encouragement, his protection, his support, my mind will reside in a place of peace. And that is just such a beautiful truth to be aware of as often as possible. And then, I guess to say a little more on that, when I was listening to Course in Miracles on Audible, really what came to me is Jesus was stating that we are much too tolerant of our mind's miscreation. Jesus Christ, God, cannot eradicate the fear in our minds because it's an illusion, but Jesus cannot eradicate that fear for us. We need to make that decision for ourselves. So it's just so important to just be aware of our thoughts. And when there is fear behind our thought system, it's just really important to refocus our attention on the light and the truth and the love. So, because there is a lot of power beyond our thought. We are always creating our own circumstances. What our goal is to connect to peace as often as possible. And then the other paragraph that I used to start with, that I haven't started with for a while, but this is what I listened to today on Audible when I was listening to Course in Miracles in chapter 2. And this is something that can be just recited all the time, every day, no matter where we are. And what Jesus writes here is, I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do, because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. So again, it's about Jesus is encouraging us, to just surrender to a power greater than ourselves, because he is always with us. And that's the only way that we can experience the peace that we're searching for, is by surrendering our will with a small w to his will with a capital W, because the truth is God's will for me is the same as my will for myself, and to be a miracle worker is to be a conduit for God's divine love. But we don't have to orchestrate the miracles. All we need to do is surrender and allow God, allow spirit to talk through us, and in order to do that, it's so important to release the fear, because God can't get through when there's fear in our minds, but when we can, I guess, be aware of our thoughts, and then if there is any fear in our thought system, release the fear, connect to the love, connect to the peace. This is what will allow us to be conduits for God's divine miracles and God's divine love. Right, Glorian?
Absolutely. Absolutely perfect. I just love everything that you shared. God's will for me is perfect happiness. If we look at that and we say, what is God's will? God's will for us is accepting what we are in truth, as we were created, love. And that's our perfect happiness, because there really isn't any peace or happiness on this world. It's changeable. We might have it for a moment, but then it changes. What we want is the perfect peace and certainty of God that we receive in that holy instant from accepting what I am. So that's God's will. God's will is that I accept myself as I am, as I was created, that omnipresent spirit of God that's everywhere. And I love what you said. And I love the name of your book. And the whole idea is surrendering. We must come to that place where we surrender our fear in order to in surrendering that fear, we surrender to our joy, what we truly are. And if you really look at that, what that's saying, it's it's our willingness to bring that darkness to the light. So when we're surrendering our fear, we're being willing to let go of that darkness, the fear, the guilt, and bring it and place it at the foot of the light, where the light takes over, because the light then dispels the darkness, because we've surrendered it. It has to be that way. The light doesn't come in and take over. It's our willingness. We have free choice. We have free will, where we can make a choice. And that's what has to happen. We have to be willing to see that the ego is not what we want. It is fear and guilt, and then surrender it to the reality of our being, what's real in truth. And, I like what you said, today's lesson. Of course, you said something about connecting to our peace, remembering that there's only God's peace. And that's what today's lesson is, that I'm not a body, I'm free, for I'm still as God created me, which is the acceptance of God's will for us. and recognizing there is no peace except the peace of God. Let me not wander from the way of peace. Be willing to not wander from the way of peace, except the ego. For I am lost on all other roads but this. I am lost on other roads than this. But let me follow him who leads me home. And that's the willingness to take second place to gain the first. And peace is certain as the love of God. So that's the whole idea, is we're going to let go of these false concepts that we hold, which that personal sense of self, which is all about false concepts. And it's just merely the belief in these false concepts as our reality. And what Jesus tells us in the Course, the blocks to love's presence are ideas of sin and guilt and judgments and grievances, the willingness to look at all that and then surrender that to what I am. And you said something else which was reminding me of the gifts of the Holy Spirit. And when we came in and about this, being vigilant, where all day, every day, we devote and dedicate our time to the service of the Christ, at where then when we surrender that false self, we do become the channels and the instruments for the love of God to work through us. So those gifts of the Holy Spirit, to have, give all to all, that's our thoughts and ideas accepted from Spirit. To have peace, teach peace, to learn peace. We're talking about God's peace. So again, we have to surrender that false sense of self to accept God's peace and allow that to demonstrate through us. And then, of course, be vigilant only for God and the kingdom. So that's where we spend all of our time, all day, every day, devoted to this, moment to moment, making that choice to surrender our fear to the love of God. Thanks so much.
Yeah, beautifully said, Gloria. And thank you so much. I always learn so much from your wisdom. Yeah, a lot of thoughts came to mind. I mean, you spoke about how the darkness needs to come to the light. A Course in Miracles cannot teach us the meaning of love, because love is the essence of who and what we are. We were all created in God's image. So love is just our natural state of being. And when we reside in a mindset of unconditional love, we are happy because we are home. We are connected to the truth of our being. And that's a beautiful mindset to reside in. I think, as I say each week, this world is our classroom. We take on these human bodies to learn lessons, to release the unconscious pain points that reside within us. That's why Dove so often says triggers are our teachers, because what they are doing is they are bringing the unconscious blocks to the light so we can see them and therefore release them. I had a day on the boat last week. It was last Wednesday, and I went out with my husband, and we ran into another boat full of my husband's best friends. They were all just wonderful, wonderful people. They were all male, though, and I was the only female. So what started to happen, and I'm totally not blaming them because it had nothing to do with them. It was all my fear, my triggers, my unhealed pain points that were surfacing. But all of a sudden, what happened is there was a lot of male bonding, a lot of male bonding, a lot of talk about sports, a lot of talk about finances, a lot of talk about things that I had no knowledge of. So I found myself getting quieter and quieter. And all of a sudden, I just felt so had, you know, I went into this dark state of mind, and I kept trying not to blame anyone else. I kept trying, you know, not to feel what I was feeling, and just maintain a joyful facade. But I really went down into the rabbit hole, and I'm very aware of what happened. You know, whenever I'm in a group situation and I don't feel like I fit in and I don't have anyone to talk to, I go back to being that little girl, you know, that little 8-year-old girl on the school playground having no one to play with. I mean, I'm so aware of that, because when I was in elementary school, I was extremely shy. I was extremely withdrawn, extremely quiet. I was bullied for years because I wouldn't open my mouth in school. And just that remembrance of me standing all alone on the playground. I mean, there's a lot of humiliation there, there's a lot of shame there. And again, you know, what happened last week on the boat, you know, no one was trying to cut me out of the conversation. No one was trying to hurt my feelings. It's just men were talking about men things. I felt like I had nothing to contribute. And then I kind of regressed into that little girl on the playground. And it's so interesting how that works, because I worked on that pain point in therapy for years, you know. And I think right now, as Course in Miracles says, we don't have to psychoanalyze the darkness. We just have to reconnect to the light. So to realize that, you know, it's okay to, I guess, feel whatever I'm feeling. And this is what allows healing to occur. I love the paragraph. This is in chapter number 1, Roman numeral number 4. And what this paragraph is entitled, it's entitled The Escape from Darkness. And it's probably one of my favorite paragraphs in A Course in Miracles. Jesus writes, the escape from darkness involves 2 stages. First, the recognition that darkness cannot hide. This step usually entails fear. Second, the recognition that there is nothing you want to hide, even if you could. This step brings escape from fear. When you have become willing to hide nothing, you will not only be willing to enter into communion, but will also understand peace and joy. So I guess how I see my trigger experiences is, I guess it's just a process of peeling away the layers of the onion. You know, in a way, I thought that pain point had already been healed, but it did pop up again. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that wounded inner child will always be a part of me. Maybe the cure, the remedy is just accepting the feelings, whatever those feelings might be, accepting the pain. I think that's super important. And I've heard a lot of Course in Miracles teachers talk about that. We don't want to deny the darkness. It's very important to accept the darkness, to own the pain, you know, and then just love ourselves, give it to God. I mean, God asks us to trust him and to be transparent and to open our heart and to show him the parts of ourself that need to be healed. Any thoughts on that, Glorian?
Wow, there's so much there, Susan, that's so important, and I think can just be so helpful to so many. Um, I'm trying to think where to start because so much was coming to me. But the idea that, well, I'll go back to the beginning where we were talking about the light and surrendering the darkness and recognizing that light is all that there is. But light is an experience. It's the experience of love. Light is understanding, and understanding that experience of love. That's the best I can put it into to words because love is an experience. It's not a concept. So when we are in the light, we are in communion with what we are in truth, which is love, wholeness. So I think it's important when we were speaking about that before to recognize that the light is always there. Grace is always there. Joy is always there. So it's our projection of fear and guilt, which is the darkness, that has to be let go of so that the light that's all that there is then not obscured from our awareness. And I love your story. I think it's tremendous in that recognition that we're always only seeing the past. So the idea is in the past you felt excluded. Then you had this opportunity to say, what does this mean to me? And yes, we feel our feelings. We own what we see. We own it because it's an opportunity to go deeper in uncovering what's really going on for us. So it is our job then to bring these unconscious thoughts to our awareness, our consciousness, put it that way, so that we can let go of it and give it to the Christ consciousness. But if we don't really recognize what's going on, it's not like anything will happen, except it will manifest again. Because if we haven't forgiven it, been willing to not judge it and let it go, it's going to come back again to show us and give us another opportunity to go deeper. So all things are lessons God would have me learn, recognizing that it's always a projection from my unresolved guilt and fear being shown back to me. So we want it, we want to look at it, we want to see what's really going on there. And as you were speaking about it, what was coming to me, because that's what I always ask, because now you brought it to me, so I see it, I own it. What does this mean to me? And what was coming to me was Spirit is offering us the opportunity to recognize there are no bodies, that these are just concepts. And that false concept of being excluded from a brother, when I can really take that opportunity to recognize that there's only equality if I choose to accept that Christ mind. So if I'm willing to let the past go, recognize that this is my old stuff surfacing or whatever it is, use it. So we're using the feelings to recognize we're bringing the unconscious to our consciousness so we can let it go. So you recognize you're not that little girl in the playground. And the idea is you could never be excluded from what you are in truth, which beyond the concept of our brothers is the same oneness. So it's Spirit saying, come back, come back home, return to me, because there's only me, there's only I. Thanks.
Dana?
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to share while I was listening to you guys talk, I just wanted to share a quick example of something that happened this morning insofar as allowing the darkness up. I was with a friend and she was telling me about, this party. It was all these family members had been visiting and so on and so forth, and how great the party was, and her neighbors and stuff had come by. And I immediately felt that whole, oh, so your neighbors were there, but you didn't ask me, right? And I've totally lived with when you were just talking about, the 8-year-old little girl in the playground and stuff like that, I could totally relate because I could just feel that, oh my God, I wasn't included. What does that actually mean? Is she really my friend? Blah, 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 blah. All of this stuff coming up. And, being a course student, I started to look at it. And then I started to notice the ego's defense, or I would call it reasoning tactics, which for a while back then, it seemed to make sense. Now it doesn't work at all anymore. But, the thoughts of, well, would you have even really gone? You don't even really like to go to gatherings. You probably would have done the same thing, and all of these opportunities to sort of excuse the behavior. I guess it would be forgiveness to destroy. It's like, I'm still seeing that you could have hurt me, but I can understand why. And I probably would have done the same thing, and it's still making it real. until, and it only lasted about a minute or so, until there was another step back from that. And it was like, wait a minute, I can recognize all of that reasoning as nothing more than an excuse to keep the story more palatable. But the whole thing is just meant to allow up that darkness, to allow up those feelings that are under the surface. The I am not worthy of being included. I am forgettable. I am rejectable, as I've heard other people call it. All of that stuff had come up, and once I was able to recognize what it was for, and obviously always including the Holy Spirit, and with all of this, at this point, it's just a very simple exchange. I'm willing to exchange what I've made of this for the truth with a capital T. And it was just such a relief once I was able to notice that second stage of oblivion and then that first stage of oblivion and kind of get back to the whole, this is the only thing it's for. It's just to bring these things out. I wouldn't have thought about it otherwise. This is just the story. My reaction to the story is the only thing that matters because it's a belief, and it's the belief that needs to be exposed and handed over in exchange for the truth. And it just reminded me how beautiful this practice is, and how much of a relief to realize that that is really the only thing, no matter what appears to be showing up, that is the only thing that there is to do. I had listened to Keith Kavanaugh on one of his videos, and he had said something to the effect of everything, absolutely everything that happens in our life is a story designed to blame the reaction on the story. And once that had hit me, and I just heard it like a week ago, it just so beautifully summed up exactly what it's all for. So it was just something I wanted to share and kind of chime in on, just insofar as all of that darkness coming up, and just letting it be there, just letting it do its thing, kind of showing it that honor and respect. You might not be what God made, but I've certainly made you, and I'm willing to look at you, right? I'm willing to acknowledge that I have given you power, and now it is time to turn this over to the truth, to the power, because none of this is serving anybody anymore. So that's my contribution.
That was a huge contribution, Dana. That is just so well said. And you really helped me process incredibly by what you shared. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, yeah, I wrote down some of your statements. You called these old trigger points beliefs that need to be exposed and handed over for the truth. I mean, that's just so well stated because I had a bit of an aha moment while you were speaking because I'm seeing the similarities of different triggers that are coming up right now in my life for healing purposes, and they all have kind of the same theme, like it's rejection. I feel like I'm being rejected. I mean, I know intellectually that I'm not being rejected, but I think emotionally, there's a lot that's in the process of healing right now. That time on the boat was a kind of it was a really great experience. Sometimes are everything in life is a lesson or a blessing, right? And obviously the time on the boat was a lesson. It was not a blessing, it was a lesson, but a lot of times the lessons teach us so much more than the blessings because they're exposing the pain that needs healing. So I felt rejected. And then I listened to your story about not getting invited to that get together, and I had a similar little trigger this morning, again, with that same common theme. There's a friend of mine who is a very, very close friend. We just haven't been able to see each other a lot lately because she's been really, really busy. So I invited her on the boat this weekend, and I gave her a choice of 2 days. And, she responded by saying on the first day, she has plans with her family. On the second day that I invited her, she has plans with a friend of hers. And my immediate reaction, it was, well, are they more important than me? I haven't seen you at all summer. I mean, why can't you make time to see me? Why can't I be included? So it's I mean, I know this is nonsensical. I know that it's irrational. I know that she did nothing intentionally to exclude me. I know all that stuff. But emotionally, there's still this little girl that feels excluded. That's a good word. I feel that this little girl, not the adult Susan, but the little Susan, I guess it's the same. You can use the big S self and the small S self, the big S Susan, the adult Susan, and the small S Susan. The little Susan, the little child, still feels like I'm on the outside looking in. And again, it seems so nonsensical because I know intellectually that that's not true, but emotionally, it still hurts, which is, really, it's really, well, I'm not going to say it's really strange. It just is what it is. We're in this world for healing purposes, and that wounded inner child that feels excluded, that feels rejected, that feels not good enough. She's still there, and she needs love. She needs caring. She needs she needs compassion, and she needs acceptance. I think that's a key word. I think it's really important that we accept those pain points that have not yet been healed because, as a good Course in Miracles, I just want to push her away because she's she's not being a good Course in Miracles student. But I mean, to just keep it real, it's so important that we accept the unhealed pain, those unhealed parts of ourselves. This is how healing occurs, and I always think of that one line in the Oriah Mountain Dreamer poem. I love to recite it. Intellectually, it's easy for me to recite that line, but emotionally, it's hard for me to actually do it, to own my pain, because I think it takes courage to sit with your pain. Oriah Mountain Dreamer writes in the middle of her invitation poem, I want to know if you can sit with pain, yours and mine, without trying to hide it or fade it or fix it. And that's just really hard to do. It's just really hard to accept the pain because it hurts, it hurts. But when we can do that, we can kind of break it up, and we can get to the other side of it, and then you have that next line, that I live to experience, and I know it's on the other side of owning the pain. I want to know if you can dance with joy, if you can allow the ecstasy to fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. I mean, God's joy is on the other side of the pain. And Dana has her hand up again. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, Dana.
Yeah, it came into my mind, just reminded me of. Now, this movie is almost 30 years old, so if I give a spoiler away, hopefully you guys will forgive me. But has anybody here seen The Sixth Sense? Okay. So you remember in The Sixth Sense that for a good part of the movie, this little child who could see dead people was terrified of all of the ghosts showing up in his vicinity. And he would do whatever he could, to try to get away from them. He'd run away, he'd cover himself with his little tent or whatever it was and hope they didn't try to come in until the one little girl, who needed to show him what had happened to her. He didn't have a choice. It was like she kind of cornered him. It was like she was saying, just look at me and listen to me. And once he did, he realized, no, she's not here to threaten me. She's here to show me something. She needs to be seen. She needs to be heard. So he does. It unravels what happened to her. And from there on, he was no longer afraid of these ghosts anymore. There's like a scene at the end of the movie where, another ghost had wound up approaching him. By this point, he had had enough courage to tell his mother, this is what's happening with me. This is why I appear to be the way I am. And this other ghost just kind of shows up at his side, and it's like, okay, you're there. I can see what has happened here. But it took him first, I guess, kind of being cornered by it. It was like, oh, I can't escape this anymore. And then he finally looked and listened and realized it was only there to communicate with him. It wasn't there to threaten him. Now, it sure looked like a threat, felt like a threat, appeared like a threat. And whatever was in him that had already judged his condition as bad and weird and scary, that was the thing that probably kept him from even being able to look to begin with. But once it was shown to him, no, I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to show you, right? I'm here to communicate with you. That was when the miracle happened, so to speak. They were able to uncover what happened with this girl, but it didn't rule him anymore. So it was just this scene in a movie that showed up in response to me listening to what you were saying, and I just shared it. So there's that.
Thank you very much. Glorian?
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm really sorry that you are feeling that way. And I think it's really important that we do validate our feelings and we meet somebody where they are. So, I think sometimes it's not helpful that, like you said, I being a good Course in Miracles student, we're not here to really hit ourselves over the head with platitudes, but to use everything. So if you're feeling that way, there's a huge opportunity there to see it differently and to be healed. Because if it keeps coming up, it comes up to be healed and let go of. So ultimately, we know that the lesson is we're being taught that we could never be separate from God, but also that acceptance of I see only the past and the willingness to let that go. And in addition to let go, the projected imagined future and just be willing to rest in that holy instant where God will reinterpret it for you. Because sometimes I think, we cannot think our way out of it. We really can't. We look lovingly with Holy Spirit, but there comes a place where we rest and we make that pause and that space and say, Holy Spirit, help me see this differently. Reinterpret what I'm feeling here, what I'm seeing here, so that I can see it in greater light and greater wisdom. because that's the only prayer we really can have, is that recognition that I and the Father are one, or to ask Spirit to guide and give us spiritual wisdom. So I think, the lesson, let all things be as they are. So this is how you feel. So you don't resist that, but recognize it's there to show you something. So you accept it. You accept that this is how I feel. And then in that acceptance, you're surrendering. You're giving it over. You're surrendering the control. The ego wants, says, I feel this way and this is justified. And however, whatever the ego is telling you, different manifestations, which is always control. It wants to be right and it wants the peace of God that's offered you, that's always there, that remembrance that you could never, ever be separate from what love is, how you were created, is, your opportunity. So we let all things be as they are. We sit with it. We ask Spirit to help us see it differently. We're accepting what we feel. We're not resisting or running away from. We're surrendering that false sense of self, saying there's another way I can look at it, which is giving up the ego control. Then we can take it to that same lesson, let all things be as they are, to the higher level, in that recognition that all there is the grace of God everywhere. I am as God created me, limitless in power and peace. I could never be separate. I could never be left out. I could never be alone. My worth is established as I am in creation. And all I have to do is surrender that false, tempting ego mind and rest in that. Now, I'm not saying it's always easy, but the idea is that's what we were talking about when we first came in, is bringing that darkness to the light. Can I figure that out? No, I was a little girl. That was what happened to me. This is me seeing only the past, and that past can only be surrendered in the eternal now. So when we're letting all things be as they are, then we're in recognition on that higher level that grace is all there is, love is all there is, and that's what I am. And if I'm not experiencing that, I'm obscuring that from my awareness through these false beliefs and false concepts, which I am projecting from an unhealed part of my own mind, the fear and guilt, that incessant voice of the ego still telling me that I'm something that I'm not. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very, very much. Karen?
Thanks, Gloria. That was so beautiful. I didn't hear what I just got back. I had a neighbor come to my door that needed my help. So I'm sorry I missed what you said, but I just what came to my mind. I don't know what you shared, but I what always helps me is like, can I be at peace with not being at peace? Like, can I just exactly what kind of what Gloria was saying? It's like, let all things be exactly as they are. Can I be at peace with not being at peace? It's okay. It's okay that I'm not at peace right now. And it will come when I'm ready. But I can be at peace, not being at peace. I mean, that actually helps me. So I'm sorry, whatever you're going through, I didn't hear it, but um, yeah, I loved everything Gloria shared. And in addition, I that does help me to say that. And also, on the other hand, can I be at peace for me if I'm going to be in chronic pain for the rest of my life? Can I be at peace knowing that I can't undo what I just went through with the major surgery that didn't really go the way I planned? Can I be at peace regardless? And I ask myself that a lot, and sometimes yes, sometimes no. So I meet myself where I'm at. No, right now I can't be at peace, but I can be at peace with not being at peace. So we love you. Everything's going to be okay. It's actually, everything is okay.
Thank you. Gloria.
Yeah, just quickly, I agree with everything that Karen shared there, and that's exactly it. We meet ourselves where we are and accept that. It doesn't help to just beat ourselves over the head with platitudes. But asking that question, I think, is just absolutely wonderful. Can I be at peace with this? And maybe you can't, maybe you can. But I think if we keep asking, can I, we'll come to see that I can. because I can recognize, just as today's lesson says, I'm not a body, I'm free, I'm as God created me. And if we really move, and I think sometimes that these seeming difficulties that we experience, health issues, I know from my own, that medical accident that almost killed me was my greatest lesson in recognizing that, yeah, I can be at peace with it because I'm not this body. And just separate, recognizing that as the observer and the beholder, stepping back and separating the reality of what I am from what the seeming situation is going on here in the body, because that's what it's here to teach us. Everything is here to teach us that I am not a body. And that's why all things are lessons that God would have me learn. And especially I feel, and this is my own opinion, but I really think the health lessons really give us a great opportunity to go deeper in I am not a body, into the experience of that. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. I'm learning so much from everyone. Thank you, thank you. You know what, Karen, what you reminded me of when you were talking about uh the health issues that you were dealing with. Um, I heard Lisa Natoli speak about that. Actually, I think she speaks about that fairly often. And I think she's just such a wonderful teacher. She spoke about how she was going through a lot of body issues, and she was doing everything she could to fix the pain, in terms of her diet, in terms of her spiritual practices. She just did so many things to try to alleviate the pain that she was experiencing. And then I remember the crux of her story. The crux of her story was, instead of trying to fix everything, she just decided she was going to accept her life exactly as it was, and she didn't try to heal anymore. She just kind of gave up trying to heal. She just accepted everything in her life exactly as it was. She decided if she was gonna to continue to live, she wanted to live happy. She didn't want to live in this struggle to fix herself, and that's when she really found healing. So I just think, I guess that's true for all of us. It's just about accepting what is in our life exactly as it is, instead of trying to fix ourselves, instead of trying to become perfect. And I also love the story that Dana, I'm not sure if it's Dana or Dana, but I love the story, Dana, that you shared about the Sixth Sense, because I did see that movie a couple of times with Bruce Willis and the little boy. I thought it was such a good movie. And I remember now how he was just really scared of all these ghosts, and then when he became willing to look at this one little girl, this one ghost, and he became willing to learn from her instead of being afraid of her. That's when he really made peace with who he was. That he made peace with his vision, and he made peace with the world. And I mean, that's such a great analogy for life in so many ways, because life does kind of trigger those unhealed pain points, not to punish us, but to heal us. So instead of resisting them, if we can just accept them, if we can just sit with them, and we can just listen to them to try to learn and figure out what they are teaching us. So I guess to go back to my time in the boat, feeling excluded, feeling rejected. Who likes to be in the midst of pain? Not a lot of us do, because to sit with the pain is really difficult. But if we can make more of an effort to just own the pain and I guess show compassion for the wounded inner child. And I've even heard like these different therapeutic techniques which talk about talking to that wounded inner child, asking that wounded inner child, that little girl, what she wants to share with us. I think all these type of practices are invaluable, because when we resist them, when we push them away, when we push away those painful emotions, it's like we're disowning parts of ourselves. But when we can embrace those painful emotions, when we can embrace the wounded inner child, that's when we can just integrate all the different parts of ourselves. And that's when true healing can occur. Because I've seen people who aren't willing to embrace, their wounds. And I can see how they act out their wounds. I can see how they get triggered by anger, because they're not willing to embrace that wounded little boy or embrace that wounded little girl, because it's just so important to accept all of ourself. And A Course in Miracles has so much psychology intertwined with all of its teachings. I mean, it was channeled after Sigmund Freud, and I've heard it spoken about, referred to by so many different teachers as a spiritual psychotherapy. And I think it does take a lot of courage to truly embody and live, the teachings of A Course in Miracles. It's not easy, but when we can do that, when we can be transparent, when we can embrace our pain and get to the other side of it, I mean, again, the love and the connection that we feel is mind blowing, because I felt it before, and it's just so beautiful. Any thoughts on that, Glorian?
Yes, absolutely. Dana put something in the chat,
Oh,
the ghosts are our traumas. But I just want to say quickly to what you said. I know we only have a few minutes, but yeah, it is a spiritual psychotherapy, which, we go through the atonement process, the undoing of fear and guilt. So, of course, the first part of the workbook is designed to recognize the error and the upside down thinking and look at that. And if we take Freud and his brilliance on the dynamics of the ego, and then we move into the idea of Carl Jung, and what we do with that workbook is we bring that unconscious to the conscious, so that then we can let go of it. And I was also present for Lisa Natoli's workshop that she came together to do. And I was, listening to what she was saying. It was the same year that this happened to me with this medical accident. And, I was listening to what she said, and we can tie it into what you said. I mean, for me, the idea is to not allow any of these things to define us, because it's not who we are. So whether it's physical pain, or that, Karen was mentioning, or the emotional pain that you mentioned about being left out, the idea is to recognize that any of this does not define me and my worth that's been established by God. So if we recognize that, we can use it to remind us that this is not who or what I am. Even if we emotionally feel hurt or whatever it was, it's not who you truly are, but it's an opportunity for you to return to that. So whether it's physical pain and going through that, it's, I'm not a body, I'm a free, I'm as God created me. I must have said that a million times in my recovery. And, being that I've done the course for quite some time, I thought I knew what that meant. But that situation took me deeper into the experience of what that means. So for you, you can use this to go deeper into the experience of what is, what we're all here called to do, is to move back into the divinity of what we are as we were created. But none of this defines us, because, if we recognize I am not in this body. So with physical pain, they could try to chop off your arm. They won't find you. The reality of you can never ever be affected by any seeming event here, whether it's physical or whether it's emotional. Nothing can ever have any effect on that changeless dwelling place, as we all were created as one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well said. I see what Dana wrote in the chat room, as you pointed out, Glorian, going back to the Sixth Sense movie. The ghosts are our beliefs, stories, pain, etc. I mean, it's very profound. There's so much truth that we can find in movies when we look deep into them. And then Dana wrote, traumas, our shadows are like the clouds that obscure the light of the sun. And Course in Miracles, talks about that quite often. It talks about the clouds, it's what is enlightenment. Enlightenment is not about finding anything outside of ourselves. Enlightenment is not about, just jumping into this other way of being. Enlightenment is about recognizing the truth of who we are, because we are all enlightened. We were born in the image of our creator. We were created in God's image. So we have the light within us. Our journey through in this lifetime is just about removing the blocks that obscure the truth of who we are. So enlightenment is again, it's not about finding anything outside of ourselves. It's not about finding anything of the world, in the world, because there is no world. Enlightenment is just remembering, recognizing that we have everything that we need within us. It's just so beautiful. It's so simple, really, because only the love is real. But it's not easy, because it's not what the world teaches. Oh, Glorian has her hand up. Yes, Glorian?
Just quick, I just want to say, I just thought that was great, your last point there, and recognizing like what Dana brought to the table about the movies. We use everything because we remember that the truth is everywhere. Beyond all concepts, the truth is there. So we can take the lesson, truth corrects all errors in my mind. And just use everything. But when we recognize the truth, as you said, it's not outside us. The truth is what I am. The truth is the Christ consciousness. The truth is the Christ mind. And we're here just to move into that realization. That's all there is. So if we let all things be exactly as they are, we're accepting what I am. Thanks so much. Great talk today. Love you.
Yeah, it really was a great talk. Thank you. Thank you, Glorian. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Lynn. Of course, we wouldn't be here without Lynn. And as the Course in Miracles states, nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. The only thing that's real is the love, and I love you all. Thank you. Thank you. I will now return the microphone to Lynn.